Hi, this is Steve Gillmor. This is the Gillmor Gang. We're in the aftermath of a horrendous tragedy in this country. Hopefully something will happen as a result of it. So even though I don't think that we're going to be able to say much about this that's going to be useful or helpful, I still don't feel that we should just ignore it as though it was something that is on our minds. So let's just go around the table. Welcome, Robert Scoble.
Hey, what's up?
How are you?
In the middle of all this tragedy, I'm watching it on TV unfold. We got lots of new apps this week. I think on my iPad I counted 40 updates to apps just this week alone. It's pretty crazy. Everybody's checking in code for the Christmas break.
Also welcome Kevin Marks.
Hi there. Nice to see you.
Nice to
Apologies
see you.
for low volume today. I've got a really sore throat.
Okay, well, John Tajak won't be here today because not only does he have a sore throat, he also has a fever, and he hasn't slept in about a week, having been in London. So we're sorry he can't make it. Also joining us from wherever you are is Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks. I'm in Palo Alto, and I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old in elementary school. So, wow, I'm feeling weird right now.
Yeah. Well, we have children as well. Everybody has children, whether they have children or have or are children. I guess we're all children, aren't we? So, you know, I don't know how to get on it or off it, but I hope that the president was correct when he said that we have to do something meaningful about this. This can't keep going on. I mean, if we have to turn this country into an armed camp where any group of gathering of children or everybody needs to be locked down with appropriate measures to guard against great loss of life like this, then I'm willing to support anybody who will support that.
That happens in Tel Aviv and in Israel. Every place we went in, well, a lot of places we went into, you had to go through a metal detector. It's just very expensive. In a country as big as America, I don't see the willingness to do that, and I don't see how we would do that. Put a TSA kind of thing at the front of every restaurant and large gathering place, every school. But that's a huge expense that I just don't see the willingness. We don't fund education well enough as it is.
Yeah, well, I think that if it comes down to who gets to be elected to Congress is based on their willingness to support some meaningful action or not. I think that it'll have an effect. I don't think that we're going to solve this problem, but we can certainly make it more difficult for this kind of thing to occur, and we're not doing that so far. So I hope something comes out of it.
Yeah, I wrote on Facebook that I don't think it's a solvable problem, but hopefully you're more correct here. I don't see any willingness to solve the gun problem, and even if we do, now we have 3D printers that can print guns. So, how do you control guns in a world where we're all going to have 3D printers in our houses in 5-10 years? I mean, a friend of mine has 13 3D printers in his house, and Autodesk, I just visited them, and they showed me metal parts that are printed with 3D printers that are just really, really complex and integrated and interconnecting. Brian Sullivan wrote, "We should control bullets." I made my own bullets. So how do you control this stuff?
You could start by making it a serious crime to own a gun. I mean, how about that for a start? So that if you do print a gun, you can go to prison for 25 years.
Okay, one at a time.
That's not going to happen in America. Our culture is in love with guns, and we have a huge gun control or an anti-gun control lobby. The NRA is only more empowered lately than less empowered.
I think that you made a more cogent point earlier, which is that look at what Israel does. I mean, there are this is a war that we are in. It's just as devastating as Al Qaeda or any other kind of threat to this country. And we have to figure out. I mean, I don't like the TSA lines at the airport, but I like them better than nothing. And if we have to selectively start to figure out how to protect, children from the age of 5 to 10 when they gather in large groups, that's not an unsolvable problem. It may be a real pain in the ass. It may be extremely expensive, but it's not unsolvable.
It's.
But I also think that, Robert, you can't start a conversation with "that's never going to happen." I mean, in Silicon Valley, we do things every day that are never going to happen, and we make them happen.
Well, it's different, when you're talking about politics and things that are so divided. Yeah, something can happen, but I don't see any willingness to make it happen. The people, I mean, there's people in my lives who are strongly gun advocates and don't want any kind of gun control.
We understand that. I mean, many of us have had situations where we feel threatened by people who obtain, weapons. There are weapons all around us, but there's a difference between, a weapon that can harm somebody at close range and something that can spray bullets in a large crowded room.
Yeah.
And if large crowded rooms have to go to a different model of security, it's not going to solve this problem, 100%. But anything we can do to knock down the possibility of this happening by even a 5% is worth whatever. I'd rather pay more to go to a movie to be safe in a movie theater. I'd rather pay more for an additional tax of any kind.
Let's look at the movie theater. You're going to put a control point in the movie theater, but you're not going to control the street. And there's going to be a crowd out front of the street, and that guy can walk up with a gun and do it too. There's two answers to this, right? And Rocky says arm everybody. That's the common answer. That's total BS too. I mean, all we need.
Let's try not to be inflammatory about this. This is already an extremely inflamed situation.
Having average everyday people holding a gun is just idiotic. I imagine some guy starts shooting and everybody starts shooting. There's going to be more carnage because of that, not less. It's just not an answer. The answer is better health, mental health laws here, and better screening for gun owners. But again,
not only that all that's true, but again, when you try and solve a problem with global omnibus laws or restrictions, it first of all, it doesn't happen because it gets knocked down by politically. But second of all, you're not going to the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem today is that a bunch of 5 to 10-year-olds were killed in a situation which could have been not prevented necessarily, but made a lot more difficult.
Yeah,
that's just a reality. There is a way of triaging this to the point where it makes it more difficult. And once you make things like that more difficult, then society begins to adapt to it, and we start to have a smarter approach to it. We've got to start dealing. That's why the president's words and his actions today are meaningful. First of all, the guy is on his second term, so he's what they call a lame duck. That means that he has the ability to be able to say closer to the reality of it. Certainly he wants to be able to, not pigeonhole the Democratic Party as being, hopelessly overcommitted to something that will not happen, as you're suggesting. But he can certainly start to make the case that he doesn't need to get reelected. He won't be getting reelected. He doesn't need to pander to those forces, and he can start to take, as he said, meaningful action.
Yeah,
And
the problem is
that
if
needs to
you're
be described, and it shouldn't be described in such a way as to give the people that are arrayed against these kinds of solutions an opportunity to figure it out before a strategy is put in place. So I'm not suggesting that we talk about this much further. What I am suggesting is that there are many people in this country and in the world who are not going to give in to terrorism, and that's what this is. It's terrorism.
And just to add to that, Steve, I was listening to CNN on the car home from the office to come on the Gillmor gang, and they had a psychologist on, and the dialogue is all about why didn't somebody look after this child who, they're referring to the 24-year-old who did the shooting. He's clearly ill. This guy isn't just ill. This guy took a deliberate decision to go and shoot other human beings. He's not a victim. He's the cause. He's not a victim. And
well, regardless
to talk
of whether
about him as if he's a victim is to mollycoddle those who resort to violence because life is hard. Yeah, life is hard. We all have a hard time, but it is not acceptable for a society to excuse human beings turning on other human beings just because they're having a hard time. Deal with it.
Well, the psychological issues involved here are complex, obviously, but what I think that we have to come up with concepts or strategies that we all agree with and work from there, not from trying to find political. That's what the president said today. He said meaningful action regardless of politics. He's in a position personally to do that right now. Now,
yeah,
how many other people he can find in that position, we'll find out. But those people can they can stand up and be counted. And eventually there will be enough of those people to form a consensus and to have meaningful political leverage to be able to get something organized that deals with the specifics of this. Whether we can control the mental health of this country or not, we can control the access to this kind of a situation. We can't control access to the guns right now because everybody's got them. So what can we do? We can only prevent or at least limit the ability for these weapons to be used in the way that they were used today. And that's something I think people can agree with. I don't think that you're going to find anybody, including the gun lobby, having a problem with defining the solution in terms of protecting people. I mean, they may want to have any citizen have the right to a certain kind of weapon, but I don't think that any reasonable person would disagree with the notion that that we need to have some services in place that prevent or limit the amount of this kind of damage that can be done with those weapons. I mean, that's why we have military. That's why we have armed forces, is not to invade countries, but to protect ourselves from bad actors. We need to protect ourselves.
I don't see the willingness. This will be forgotten in a week, and just like it has been over and over again, this hasn't been the first time. 9,000 plus people die in America due to gun violence, and we'll be on and. We're not going to do anything about this. It costs too much money to put.
How about if our public service? How about if our the people in the media, the people that we go and buy their movies? How about if they are boycotted? Their projects are boycotted if they don't sign on to some sort of agreed upon a scenario about this situation. Do you think that might have an impact on people? I do.
Yeah, but I don't see any willingness to do that. I just don't. This is American culture. If
I had to choose if I had to choose between buying two different computers, one from a company that supports some meaningful action in the way that I've suggested or that they might suggest that I would agree with, and a company that doesn't, I'll go with that other company.
But I think, Robert, you're the last person I would expect to start with, it isn't going to change.
No, I've been through it.
You are a change agent. You believe things can change. This event today, right now, is a psychological impact on every single American. Americans are receptive today to things they would not have been receptive to yesterday. And as an agent of change, you can act on that. I bet you if any politician today would argue to reverse the right to own guns, to close down every gun shop, once that has happened, even to go to the point of disarming the police, that politician would be popular with a very large percentage of the population. So you can't use the past as a reason why the future has to stay the same. It doesn't have to stay the same.
Hang on a second. Robert is expressing an opinion, and it's, I certainly agree with him that the chances are that for a large number of people, this will be forgotten next week. I think that's history shows that that's true. But I'm not suggesting that we have to boil the ocean in order to be able to solve or to help with this problem. And I think that, reducing everything to a binary decision or choice is a way of making sure nothing will happen.
What's the little, Silicon Valley works on changing little things. Twitter didn't seem like a big thing when it came out, the day it came out, right?
Well, that you can say that. I certainly not the day it came out, but the day that I actually started to like it, I was saying loud and clear, and so were you. That it was a meaningful thing. Yeah, I mean, there was a point in time when it got stable enough that everybody could realize that what the implications of this were, and there were people like Mark Benioff who bet on it in the enterprise, and guess what? Now it's a big deal.
I think the thing I'm going to support is better mental health, which means more nationalized healthcare. Which, by the way, the pro-gun people are anti-Obamacare, right? And
they lost the election, so guess what?
Well, they lost it by what? A 0.5%?
No, they lost the election. This isn't horseshoes.
Well, the problem is you need to have meaningful change. We put against
Obamacare was meaningful change.
Well, we had anti-gun laws in place, when the Brady bill came along, and those gun laws have been weakened over time because this lobby and the belief in American society that guns are a right is just very, very strong, and that belief is going to come back next week. Right now, true. Yes, everybody who owns a gun is very quiet.
The belief around the world is the guns, owning a gun is a right. Whether the laws say it or whether they just act on it, that's the way people are. People will do what they have to protect themselves. That is a different question than how we protect innocent 5 to 10-year-olds who are aggregated in a place where they are vulnerable to this kind of an attack.
Look at Syria. Syria, there is no right to bear arms. It hasn't stopped the population at large rising up against their oppressive government with arms. It's always possible for a people to fight against their government, including with arms. So the justification that everyone should have the right to get a gun because one day we might need to fight our own government is BS.
But I'm not willing to even argue the point about whether it's a right or whether it's going to happen or not. That's like saying, the sky is blue, but I'm going to argue that it really isn't blue or it shouldn't be blue.
Right.
Sorry.
So how do you fix this problem?
I didn't say you fix this problem. I'm talking about the problem that we are presented with today, which is that there are 20 families who are mourning their 5 to 10-year-olds who were killed mass in a small classroom. There are schools. There are lots of kids in small classrooms. We should develop whatever technology is necessary to make that hard to do.
I think this says it right there. We're not going to go after guns.
I didn't say go after guns. I said we're going to go after the kinds of congregation of innocent small children and make sure that it is more difficult. What do you mean? We can't do what? Explain to me how you can't do that.
what are you going to do? Okay, at a school, you're going to put a metal detector.
Absolutely.
Then the gunmen will wait till they all come out of school. They all congregate in places,
Then,
or they'll wait
then
until
they're
they're
on
in
the
the
street.
shopping mall.
Then they're on the. Hang on. Then they're on the street. First of all, then they're on the street, and there are, you can have police that are guarding against this. You can have, citizens who are guarding against this kind of a thing. There are ways to make it more difficult for this to happen. That is something that can be done. That is called meaningful action. That's what the president said he is going to do, and he was wise to say not what specifically they're going to do, but to figure out what we're going to do, and in the context of where we are right now, which goes to Keith's point, which is this is, there are points in time and in history where people say, okay, I get it.
I
I've
certainly
had
can
enough.
see paying for this at school, but again, in California, we're already faced with how many billions in deficit, and our education system is being underfunded. Where are we going to come up with the money to put a metal detector and a cop?
I don't know. That's
school?
a good question to ask, and it's a good question to ask our elected representatives.
And
And if they haven't got a good answer, then find the people that actually are suggesting this. I mean, what are the taxes on cigarettes? How was the tobacco cartel brought into line?
Well,
As such as it was, it's still
tobacco was a multi-decade long cultural fight. I remember when I was
time to start now.
Okay. When I was a kid, they walked into school with a black lung of a smoker, and that's how they started changing culture. And it was a long fight.
Exactly. Now you and I are on the same page, which I believe that we have been all along in this conversation, which is right. So we're going to start now, right?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Enough of this. Let's talk about fun stuff. What's going on? That all these apps that I saw. There's a new shiny Google Plus iOS app, which
very nice. Come on,
okay.
baby.
So what's nice about it?
So several apps, Facebook and Google Plus, updated much faster. Google Plus, by the way, a week ago added this communities feature, which is sort of like Facebook groups. I opened up a community.
The worst of circles now distributed to a bunch of communities that you don't understand who's a part of.
It's really exactly. It's really noisy, and I personally I'm shocked that nobody's copied Quora yet. Quora is doing distributed information communities right by keeping the quality up through a variety of methods. And nobody has copied that yet. I'm pretty shocked, actually, partly because Quora hasn't taken off like Instagram. We see lots of copies of Instagram or competitors there because Instagram became $1 billion thing really quickly.
I think it's because Quora is too small an idea from a monetization point of view.
Yep. And so will Google Groups is going to prove to be too small of an idea because it's getting spammed to death. They had to write filters before it turned on to try to keep the spam and low quality messages down. But I opened a community up and it already has 5,000 people in it for people who are building companies. And it's amazing the quantity of low quality messages. Again, the world is about to shift toward noise control. We need better noise control. In fact, one of the cooler apps I've gotten lately is this thing called Prismatic. I don't know if anybody on the show uses it, but let me pull it up here so you can see what it looks like. Prismatic in an hour or less learned what kind. Oh, it crashed. Come on, Prismatic, stay up. There you go. Prismatic learned the kinds of news I like, and there is no noise on this thing. It is just, it picks the really good and really broadly tech news, and I've been able to tune it really, really well. On Monday, I'm going to be at Facebook and talking to the news team about noise control and how they approach it. I know, Steve, you hate or you don't like the noise control feature of Facebook because you can't control it and you can't see into it. I agree with you, but I'm going to talk with them about their philosophy. And I sure wish there were other choices to control noise. On Gmail, by the way, in the last month has gotten dramatically better because of three things. Let me pull my Gmail up so you can see these things. First, I am using this thing called SaneBox, which removes unimportant email out of my inbox and puts it into a variety of different boxes. I'm also using a thing called Other Inbox, which is down here, and it does the same thing. And look at how many different messages it filters out in the last day or two. It's just amazing how much crap it gets out of my inbox. And then I turned on this feature in Gmail itself, so you can turn this on, called Smart Labels. And Smart Labels turns on three new folders, Forums folder, a Notifications folder, and a Promotions folder. And look at how many promotions, low-quality messages it has gotten out of my inbox. It is just magical. My inbox is just stunningly clean right now, and it's absolutely wonderful because of these three separate tools.
So, is there a feature for low quality blog posts?
Not yet. Prismatic really is it, right? Prismatic is one of the best noise controls. You teach it what kind of blog post you want, and then it finds that, and it just does not let a lot of noise through, and it's really pretty cool. But we need more of them. We need, and I wish we had an open system that we could write filters for Facebook and for Twitter and for Google Plus and share them. Right now, for instance, if you really don't care about this news story going around, this tragedy, why can't I filter all messages about that into a folder and get it off my feed? I can't do that. And I wish I could in lots and lots of instances.
I'm pretty sure it was only like 4 weeks ago that Steve was arguing for all this stuff, and you were saying, bullshit, Facebook's perfect.
No, I never said Facebook is perfect. I said Facebook is better than Google Plus or Twitter. Google Plus and Twitter have no noise controls. At least Facebook is trying a noise control. It's far from perfect, though. I mean,
right. I know. I think to be fair, Robert just agrees with the usual complaints that we are making, which is that there's no obvious control of filtering. And what he's just talking about here is, can I have a tool that I can configure that reduces the flow? I mean, I would prefer to have something that actually uses @mentions and all the other stuff the Twitter has made illegal now, to be able to proactively find the things that are interesting to me, because I certainly know what that is, and and I'm interested in my friends, what they think is interesting as well.
Yeah.
But given that that's not available because Twitter has outlawed it, the only thing we can do is what Robert's talking about, which is to throw away the volume of stuff, so that what's left over by implication is more interesting. So I think that's a good plan.
Last week, I wasn't on last week, but I listened to the show, and Steve, you introduced what's happening with email and text in the light of the rise of apps like WhatsApp or Line in China, KakaoTalk in Korea, Weixin in China, which is beginning to make a separation between messaging to people you know. Many of those apps use the address book on the phone as the filter, as a kind of a whitelist, if you like, on the one hand. Then email, which is like this big spam box on the other hand, and then content-based streams, which are another thing altogether, and the ability to filter those. And it feels like the staggering numbers that are using apps like WhatsApp.
Yeah.
It's about. I was looking at the projections. It's projected that there'll be 12 trillion messages a year. Sorry, that's today's number. 20 trillion messages a year by 2016 over what's called over-the-top messaging clients. compared to only 9 trillion SMSs. And Facebook and social networks are a tiny, tiny number compared to those. And the movement is all from email and SMS to these over-the-top messaging apps.
Twitter alone right now is 400 million tweets per day. You're only seeing a very, very small sample of that on my Twitter account. And we're going to see a lot more messages from all sorts of things due to the trends that we're seeing. For instance, the number of sensors on us and around us is going up exponentially. I have a Nike Fuel Band, a Fitbit. We're going to have Google Glasses, which are going to have 7 sensors on them. My Nest thermostat is a sensor, and more sensors are going to be in our world and on us and around us, and they are all going to be able to kick messages off at a pretty high rate. I mean, if you search Twitter for Nike Fuel Band, you'll see all the tweets that the Nike Fuel Bands are tweeting on its behalf, and we're going to see more and more messages like that.
Well, you can see, if you look at the push notification stream, you get a very good approximation of what the relative balance is currently between tweets, Facebook, although I have a limited amount of Facebook input, and email. And it's basically 50-50 now, and it's trending more toward Twitter. And, direct messages, texts coming from via the phone, and then visible via the push notification stream. So we're getting there right now, and it's not really by throwing away email, because basically the email is already limited and compressed by spam filtering, number one, and it's also made less and less useful by basically commercial spam.
Yeah, I mean, in the last week, Google's new filter caught 594 promotional emails in my inbox, things like MGM Resorts, Petco, Film Society of Lincoln. This stuff used to show up in my inbox. It's not defined as spam. Some of it I actually wanted, like the Duckhorn Wine Company. I signed up for their mailing list, but it's noise. It's not important stuff that belongs in my inbox.
Right,
And
but my point is that the relative value. If I go to, on my phone, I go to, first of all, this shows up in the stream immediately, even when the phone's off. When I'm not using it, it'll just sit there, and when something happens, it shows up. And so I have in my peripheral vision, I can see that there's something, and I can look at it, etc. This is more interesting to me than email. Email is like a second or third stage kind of importance in this universe. So we've already solved this problem. The problem that we now have, of course, is the volume. I've turned on Twitter notifications for people that I follow, and I've configured it for about 150 people.
yeah,
And
I can't.
No, it kills my battery usually by the middle of the afternoon. On the other hand, I plug my phone in all the time now. In other words, I'm starting to cope with this reality, and I've got different things on my iPad mini than I have on here, so that certain things I can lay off to the other device. We're starting to develop, what I call gestures to accommodate this kind of information stream. When the social networks become more valuable, and you go to the social network information first, it squeezes out even more of the email, because you just can't get to it. I find myself, triaging my email on breaks from handling the information that's already come into me that I've pushed to the reading list, for example. Kevin, you haven't said anything, and I know you can't talk, but do you have a comment?
Well, I really can't talk, which is part of the problem. I think we are. I agree. We are conserving. We need to conserve attention more, and we're going to spend more time filtering these things. But what happens with all these is that we create an alternative channel that is less noisy, and then we go and noise that one up, and then we have the same management problem again in a different channel. And that's we're seeing that repeat over and over again. when email first came out, it was the less noisy channel and the shortcut that the social networks are now. And we still keep iterating on the same issues.
I know,
I think,
but you're disregarding the fact that behavior starts to change, which influences the way that people respond to your behavior and how they try and reach you. And there is an improvement in the overall signal to noise. If this didn't work better than just looking at email, I would stop doing it. It does work better. It's just more time consuming, and I have to keep coming up with these strategies to try and automate it to my benefit. But I wouldn't be spending this time doing it if it wasn't better than what it used to be.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I think it creeps up on us because when these social networks first came out, they were much cleaner because there were far fewer people on them, and it was much easier to see the signal in them. And it was the same with blogging. Blogging was this high quality signal for a while, and then it filled up with spammers too, and we had to spend a lot more effort deciding which ones to keep track of and so on. And it happens with all these communication channels, and it's a continuous arms race. And yeah, we can build tools that help a bit, but it's hard to. What we will end up doing is finding another channel to use instead that gets less noisy.
I don't know if it's about choosing channels. I think we all do that anyway, so I don't disagree in a big way. But I think it's also about preserving time, and there's really two big domains of time. One is the people you want to pay attention to, which is a function of the variables every day. That's a changing group. And then there's the issues you want to pay attention to. And the business model of Facebook is to try to persuade you to pay attention to people you're really not interested in. And the point of Twitter is to try to make you to pay attention to issues you're really not interested in, both of which is to maximize page views and ultimately revenue.
I don't agree with that last statement. I think Twitter's working incredibly well. I think that Facebook has its issues, but in times like this, you start to see people. A friend of Tina's was talking about how she was impacted, that a friend of hers was directly impacted in today's events. So there's that kind of information which Facebook has empowered us with in a way that never existed before. So that's what Facebook is good for, at least as far as I'm concerned. In terms of your Twitter trying to push us in the direction of whatever, I don't care what Twitter's trying to do. I'm interested in what they are allowing us to be able to do with the information stream that they have built and that they are powering.
Yeah, but
and I think that's phenomenal.
You want to be aligned. I mean, it's really important that customers are aligned with the product guys. If your goals are the opposite of their goals, it's unlikely that the features they ship, and Track is a great example of this, it's unlikely the features they ship are going to meet your needs.
That's true, but that's not what overall what they are doing. I'm being told to look straight ahead, so I'm pretending to look at you now, Keith, but actually I can see you out of the corner. Yes. Now
what I do is I position the picture of you right near my camera, but you can't do that.
No, I can't. It's actually right here.
Just show everybody where you're not looking.
Oh, there you go. I'm looking. See, right here.
Oh, right.
See, I can actually see me.
But Keith's there. There he is.
Yeah, that's great. Hi, Keith.
Hi.
So what I'm saying is that regardless of what a perfect world would produce in terms of Twitter aligning with my goals, that on a large percentage basis, what Twitter does is fantastic and has been since day one. And there are limitations of what they allow us to do. And recently they've basically cut off all ability for any third-party developer to be able to do anything in this filtering area that's meaningful, which means that we have to...
That's not quite true. There's two... there's two companies that have the Firehose feed. Knip is one, and Nick
DataSift.
Sorry, is the other one, and there's several others. I think Salesforce has access to the Firehose feed.
I'm not talking about what companies can do. I'm talking about what I can do. I cannot get. There used to be a number of applications that were very, very helpful in terms of monitoring and filtering the stream of news in ways that I was interested in, which I've already described ad nauseum, which is not only what the things that I'm interested in, but the things that the people that I'm interested in are interested in. And then maybe one more sphere of influence out from that.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. Twitter has outlawed that, and in the net of what Twitter does, that sucks. But Twitter's still fantastic. I mean, look at this event today.
Yeah.
Where did we find out? Now, forget about when we found out about it first. When did we find out about it at all on an ongoing basis? When did we first know that the president was crying on national television? It's Twitter.
I saw it on Facebook.
So Steve,
fine, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but your point is well made, and I had taken as an assumption that the viewers are sophisticated enough to know that when we focus on negatives, it isn't like an absolute thing. We're focusing on negatives is very useful because that's where you seek change. Of course, Twitter's awesome, and Facebook is awesome as well. I mean, I was in Japan last week, and I can tell you that prior to Facebook, the idea that an American company with a universal user interface could become the dominant social network in Japan, I was meeting with the CEO of Mixi. He is the loser in this because his very Japanese user interface was killed by Facebook. The idea you can build a global platform that works everywhere with a universal UI would not have been believed. So, of course, Facebook's awesome. What it does is awesome, and Twitter's awesome. But it's more interesting to look at what they don't do well, because that's where we can figure out what comes next.
So, to try and bring it back to the overall, filtering topic, what is working right now is these social networks. These social networks are becoming a much more what's the word? The signal to noise of social networks is now more valuable for me than email. In terms of our use of Chatter internally and our customers using Chatter at Salesforce, the amount of email that is being replaced by these kinds of group conversations is enormous. And the value of, and the time compression, to your point, Keith, of dealing with information where people that don't necessarily have an axe to grind in a particular conversation, but have something meaningful to offer in a social network environment, they chime in, and there's problem resolution from unintended sources, or from sources that you might not expect to deliver. I asked a question the other day of somebody who had posted some notes on a meeting that I had to miss, and I said, well, what was the answer? And somebody who was in the meeting, who I didn't even know was in the meeting, responded and gave me the answer. Took about 10 seconds. There's no way that email would ever be able to solve that problem. And as a result, we have these mechanisms, Facebook, Twitter, Chatter, Google Plus. I don't use it that way, but it certainly is a powerful network that's getting more powerful. These things are innately valuable, and they are solving problems that didn't either exist or could be solved previously. And that is going to not stop. It's going to escalate.
Yeah. There's a reason for this. Living in public gets you to to what I call scalable living. If I answer you just on email, it's only you. If I answer you on Chatter, it's all my coworkers. If I answer you on Facebook, it's the entire world can answer, or Quora, or Twitter, or Google
Right,
Plus.
and this and this is what I mean by these spheres of influence. This growing, escalating. What is it? The Kevin Bacon phenomenon. 10 degrees of separation. I'm saying 3 degrees of separation on Twitter or these social networks produce a combination of serendipity and discovery and expertise that cannot be duplicated through any other technology that exists.
So I live in there's kind of 3 different Keith tiers. There's the Keith tier that gathers information as part of thinking, and that's pretty private. I use Apple's remember this page feature, whatever it's called, read it later.
Reading
stuff
list, yes,
for that.
I use it
There's various ways I gather information. It's pretty private. Sometimes I have private conversations and I can't share that with anybody, but I want to remember them. Then there's the me that communicates with people I know, either friends, family, or colleagues, that email or SMS are my primary vehicles. And then the third me is the one that lives in public, the one that Robert was referring to. And I actually think all of us have all 3 of those, and we choose the right tools, the appropriate tools. And there isn't really a tool that supports all 3.
So you're talking about Keith tiers, basically.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't think I think push notification allows us to not need to have a single source vendor for all these problems. I think that if you've got a synthesis of these streams that you can control, then you have the ability to be able to create an application by inference of your own that allows you to be able to improve your information.
Mm-hmm.
Robert?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why my microphone isn't working right, but that's okay. We'll deal with it. Sorry, I got a little distracted by the chat.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right, so...
well, the other challenge is routing things between the streams and deciding when to do that, because you don't want to do that automatically, but it can be a lot of effort to do it manually. And you need a bit of friction to decide, no, I won't just copy everything on Twitter into Facebook, or everything on Twitter into email, but you've got to work out who you're trying to reach and what you're trying to say to them, and then use different channels to route stuff back and forth. And that could be easier than it is at the moment. It's still fairly fiddly to produce a good pull quote and a link and an attribution into a tweet or a Facebook thing, or to an email and so on.
Yeah, and in fact, that's not only difficult to do, but it's being made more difficult by people like Twitter, which have... For example, when we would announce the live chat room on the show on Friend Feed, it used to, in fact, it still says that it does it, automatically broadcast to Twitter. But at some point in the last month of Twitter shutting everything down, they shut that down. So I have to actually take a different series of steps in order to be able to broadcast that link on Twitter, which I didn't have time to do today. So, it's not only is it not easy to do it, it's getting more and more difficult because evidently these companies think that this is somehow going to be an improvement to their business model. I think that they're wrong about this. I think that Google had it right when they felt that if the more information that they could receive and transfer, the whole idea of staying off of their network, pushing people to the source of the information that they're looking for, and not trying to capture them and keep them in their services. I think that was the right idea, and I think that with the mobile environment, that this idea of multiplexing multiple streams of push notifications is a way to solve that problem yet again, which is to the user. If the user feels that they have access to multiple streams and can control them in terms of timeliness and importance effectively, then they don't care how many different services they support.
I want that to be true. but I fear that already my notification stream is somewhat overwhelming.
Oh, I agree.
So
I agree.
I'm
But
not sure it ultimately will be true.
well, I think that you just by defining that, you're defining the fact that it will be true. It already is somewhat true. When I discover a stream of information that's too verbose, for example, there are people that I have included on the Twitter notifications, in that follow stream for push notifications, that although I think that they're occasionally interesting, they're too verbose, and I've taken them off. So eventually, you start to contour in reverse the kind of follow cloud that originally we had. I mean, I'm up to about 450 people that I follow, and I tried very hard to keep it under 300 for a very long time, and recently I've had to sort of expand it. But then there's this interior notification cloud, which is around 150, 160 people. And that's already too many people. Like I said, it's killing my battery. But somewhere there will be soon, I would hope, the ability to be able to control that stream. And what Kevin's talking about, I think, the ability to push from one stream to another and perhaps be able to find a more finite source of richer and deeper information that I then replace the larger streams with, it's going to appear. I think it'll appear soon.
So an example of that, I'm just looking at my Twitter stream, and I follow Steve Case. And Steve Case just retweeted Billy Graham saying, why would God let something like this happen? And Billy Graham has a piece that you click on, go and read it. I'm not at all interested in what Billy Graham's got to say here. I do follow Steve Case. So to me, that's noise. I don't really want to know it, but I don't know any way I could have filtered that.
Well, but what I'm suggesting is that the balance of information. I mean, Steve Case once retweeted a post of mine, which I was very surprised. I thought that was fantastic, because certainly I know more about Steve Case than he does about me. But you get this sort of aggregate sense of people through these social networks, and if you can then start to be able to react to it in a way that you control, as opposed to what Facebook does, which is they control it for you. And I'm sure they do a very, very good job, but I just don't know what that job is.
No, I don't think they do a good job. I mean, I don't really look at my Facebook stream very much because it's full of personal stuff, whereas Twitter at least gets close to a topic-centric view of the world, mainly because of the people I follow tend to be topic-focused. But I still can't really follow topics very well on Twitter.
Keith, that's only because of how you set up Facebook. Here's my news feed on Facebook, and it only has news. It does not have any personal information on it. Facebook is a very malleable engine, and depending on how you set it up, it'll bring you what you want. The thing that Facebook started out as is more like a context list. And Zuckerberg's brilliance was asking emotional questions, asking you to friend people or like people. Those are emotional behaviors. And when you build a social graph of emotion, you get all the personal stuff, because most of us are attracted to personal stuff. We want to know what our brothers are doing, or our best friends are doing, or what Steve Gillmor's doing. We don't want to know what some random guy that we don't know is doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing the relative merits of Facebook or Twitter. What I'm saying is that they each have value,
yeah,
and that some value is more configurable than other value. Right now, Twitter has reduced the configurability of their information stream through their economic actions, or what they think is in their interests economically. I can't do anything about that. But what they have also done is to improve their interfaces substantially. It's a lot more coherent, the way that they push. For example, they push people who follow you. I was followed by, what's that guy's name, who was one of the founders of Facebook?
Dustin Moskovitz or
Severine or whatever his name was.
Edward said Severine.
Yeah, he followed me this morning.
Yeah.
God knows why. But that's interesting to me. And so there was an email that I got that said that this guy did and 2 other people. It's not like I was interested in always would click on the email that told me about who was following who. But what they're doing now is to basically take the people that are following them that I follow and listing them in a way that I can sort of drill down into it and I can see what these degrees of separation look like. That's a very valuable service. It's not profound, but it's a lot better than what they used to do, which was nothing. Is it as good as what some of the third-party developers have done with that, like what BetaWorks has done with these things? No, it's terrible. And the sooner that they figure out how to be able to incentivize and accommodate both developers and users to this information that we are all looking for, the better. But so that's how I feel about them. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I think the retweeting is sort of the leakage that lets you see that information indirectly, because the flow of followers can be too much to keep up with, and certainly this is certainly my way on Google Plus. I have no idea who's following me there because the flow got too big. But what you see on Twitter is the retweeting, and because you get that little flow back of people favoriting and retweeting stuff, you get some sense of who else is seeing your things because someone else has passed it on, and that helps you expand your circles in a useful way. And that little bit of signal I find is very useful. And yeah, my number of people I follow creeps up, but they're generally interesting people I'm following, not just randomly following everyone back.
These are these metadata nuggets that actually are the value in the stream. It's not what to Keith's point about what Steve Case said. I'm not particularly interested in that particular tweet, but there's a point where you just get a sense of people. Are they over the line in terms of their value? I find it interesting not only what Steve Case says about technology, but what also he says about media. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why I followed him initially, because I thought that he was an interesting edge case, pardon the expression, not head case, but edge case of this media transformation that's been accelerated astronomically by the iPad and the iPhone to a certain extent. So, those are interesting people, and at some point, if they suddenly start to get too noisy or too loud or too focused on topic areas, I don't think it's about topic areas, Keith. I understand that that's something that you find interesting, but what I find interesting is the blend between the personal and the broader themes of what they're interested in. I to use Robert's book's term of context, the context is everything. It is how we can be accessing the context of the information flow is the only way that we can improve on it.
Here's another
but Steve, I would guess that you also like to discover new people that you don't currently know, that you never would follow. And the only way to do that is a topic-centric. I'm not saying either or, by the way.
No, I don't agree. I don't think it has anything to do with topics.
But a topic-centric view lets you discover voices that you didn't even know about before.
I don't have a topic-centric view, so the answer to your question is no. That is not how I discover people. And yes, I do think that discovery is extremely important, but it's not through topics. For me.
You would
or hashtags.
You would if you had Prismatic, because you could set Prismatic up to be topic, and you would if you were on Quora. Quora, I have 100 topics that I follow. I don't follow people anymore in Quora. I found that it was too noisy. That following topics, like following Node.js, was really cool. I
find comments too noisy. I mean, I do not enable discovery. It's very simple how I enable discovery. It's through the people that I follow and ad messaging, and as Kevin points out, retweeting. That's the only way I do it.
But we're going to want to change context and what we're going to see. Here's a use case I'm going to throw out there. Let's say we were both skiers and we were both skiing at Heavenly Valley this weekend, and I have on some computer where I'm holding my cell phone on the lift line and looking for things. And you're over on the other side of the mountain, the Nevada side, and you Instagram a photo of how deep the snow is over there. I want to see that, and I want to see it now because you're close to me proximally doing the same thing, and you are giving me information that could help improve my life. Now, I don't want to see my brother talking about his bar in Virginia, and I don't want to see this news story because I'm sick and tired of hearing the news story. I just want to see news that can help me live my life better.
Okay, and let me describe that in terms of the way that I triage this.
Yeah.
What I am interested in is of the people that I find valuable to me as sort of the R&D department of my information, ascertaining information. Of those people, who has some information about what the weather looks like in this area. The problem with me and topic areas is that it, by definition, is too verbose. It's not efficient for me to be able to scan it. Like you are, Robert. You're incredibly popular on Google Plus, and the comment streams are fascinating. They're too damn verbose for me. I just don't have time for it. I look at the first 5 and I go, "Oh, that's interesting," and then I look up and it's an hour later. It's just I don't have the hour.
I like what you're saying, Steve. I actually changed what I was saying before in light of what you said. I also find that topic centric, taken alone, there's too much noise and not enough signal. But topic filtered against people and discovering new people through referrals from people you already have chosen to follow. I think that's correct, and I think you're hitting a sweet spot. And I think that you're expressing it in an extreme way. I think you actually do care about topics from day to day. It's just that you can't approach the topics through the topic. You approach the topics you care about through the people you know.
I mean, I follow RollingStone.com. I get an email newsletter about it every day. Of those stories, I will typically push 4 or 5 stories to the reading list. Now, the reading list is, you've already referred to it. This is iOS. The value of the reading list is that it means that it works on my iPhone. If I'm on the BART, it works on my iPad mini anywhere. It's fantastic. But the key information here is that I don't have time to read any of those stories. So this thing starts to fill up. The second thing that I follow, I have an alert on the Beatles. Now, you'd be amazed. Well, you wouldn't be amazed, but I continue to find it valuable. Even though it's very verbose, I will find reading list stories about once every couple of alerts. So there's some more reading list stuff. Then there's the New York Times. Typically, I will go through the New York Times. There's a page. I have a subscription to the New York Times, so I can look at it in the rich iPad app. I usually don't have time to do that, except on Sundays when it's faster for me to do it that way than to do it the way I normally do, which is I go down the today's paper page and I just reading list the stories that I'm interested in reading. That doesn't mean I'm going to read them. It doesn't, it means that I may then subsequently, after I've built up the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and stuff that comes in on Chatter, which has citations about blog posts or whatever, I push those to the reading list. The reading list becomes the aggregation point for what I'm going to actually decide what I'm going to read. Then I try and filter that based on the amount of time that I have to do it before the next day's paper comes out, and then I've got twice as much information sitting in that queue. This becomes the way that I accommodate information. And things that don't get onto that reading list, the chance of me absorbing it is minimal.
I go even further. I learned productivity from a guy who said never handle any piece of information twice. Mostly he was talking about mail and memos and email, but I apply that to everything in my life. I do not use Instapaper to save things to read later. I either act on it right then and forward it or share it or put it on Twitter or send it to my boss or tell you about it, call you on the phone, go, did you see this? Or it goes away because I just have too much inbound to store more of it.
Well, the only thing that you lose from that I gain from my strategy, first of all, it takes you press down on the link and a context-sensitive menu comes up and you tap reading list. So it takes about 2 seconds per item to do this. The thing that happens is that I may not necessarily be interested in a story enough to actually go read it now. I mean, there are things that I will, in addition to putting it on the reading list, if I've got the time and I really want to know what it says, I'll go to it immediately. Maybe 1 out of 10. But the number of stories that I will go to hours later, when it's like DVR, it's not that I want to delay it, it's that I just want to move it to a window where I have time to absorb it.
In the cases where I want to go back and read something, because I remember, hey, that TED Talk, Steve was talking about something cool, or there was a New York Times article on autism and that I needed longer time to read or something like that. There's this thing called Google, and I can search it, and I can pull it back up pretty easily by typing autism today, New York Times, or something like that.
Yeah, but that's you, because I don't use search. I use people who use search.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
I use people who use search to do
I do that much more often. I mean, I will use search occasionally because, Tina tells me to, search on it because she's not going to let me do it through her.
I find the amount of new stuff coming at me is higher, and the utility of the new stuff is more than the stuff that you sent me an hour ago in most cases. And when it's not, search lets me find it. I use Flipboard a lot, and Flipboard has a beautiful search in it. In fact, I was just showing you the New York Times. I never read the New York Times, but rarely do. But when I want to, I search for it on Flipboard, and up comes the New York Times. And if I wanted to look for a specific article in the New York Times, I could search on that as well. And the searches are getting very, very good.
But the problem with that is for me, who has been reading the New York Times since I was reading, so it's many, many decades, is there's never enough time to read the New York Times.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then it's twice as bad a problem because there's another one tomorrow. And a lot of the time I'll go a whole week because I'm traveling or whatever, where I've just got this queue that's been set up, and I go back, and luckily there are a number of articles which, if I had on that day decided to read them, they were interesting enough for me to read them, but I didn't have time to do it. But by the time that I actually get around to backtracking, they are superseded by yet more timely versions of that same article, so that I don't have to actually read it. So time does have a habit of sort of healing all time wounds, if you follow what I'm saying. So these things are not intractable, to go back to the beginning of this conversation, but they're not soluble. They're just dealable with within the limits of time and space. And what that priority list is everything. It's not and that's my only point about using the reading list, is the reading list accommodates the information that I may have subsequently gotten, which makes something that's on that list more interesting than I expected it would be later. That turns out to be very highly actionable information, is the stuff that I hadn't quite realized its importance. There's yet the other wrinkle that you're describing, which is to go back and search for it, but I find that to be incredibly inefficient in terms of time. I have to remember.
Steve, I just wanted to say I've got to drop off in 4 minutes for another call.
All right, let's wrap this up. Let's go around the table, and we'll start with Kevin.
I'm surprised we managed to get through the whole show without mentioning Google Maps on iPhone. So that's interesting. Maybe we're saving that one for next week. I think the other thing is being able to route stuff between these things gets to be important. One of the things that I find really useful is because I've got Pinboard hooked up to Twitter and a bunch of other places, so that any links I do share end up in there. I have got somewhere to go back and search for them. And I think that's useful. And if this then that has been very good for this. And Twitter cutting those off is I think is a big mistake on their part, and that's going to drive people to use other systems more. But being able to, I think I agree with you about the notification stuff, and part of that is we're going to need to make the notifications programmable and respondable to by these tools as well in future. I think that's something we're going to need to happen.
Keith.
The other thing we didn't talk about, surprisingly, is the whole Instagram, Twitter debacle.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that last week, and basically, as far as my daughter Ella is concerned, the Instagram is the new Twitter. That would be where I'd leave that. So what else?
I call it Insta
Flickr coming back was
Twittergram.
What?
Insta Tweet and Twittergram. In other words, they're converging into being the same thing in different, competing for the audience.
Robert. I'll come back to you if we have a second, Kevin. But, Keith, you're the one that has to leave. So, Robert, wind up.
It was like Christmas 2 weeks early with 40 new apps and more coming in every minute. It seems like I just updated another 2. The world keeps getting better.
I noticed that Xfinity is now allowing downloading of some shows. Primarily only networks like Showtime. So you can literally download and ship using TV Everywhere. You can download Homeland, the big episode where we find out that I can't say.
No, don't say.
Spoilers everywhere.
So what about Snapchat, Robert? That's kind of taken me a bit by surprise. It seems to be getting big from nowhere. Is that a threat to Instagram?
I don't use it, so I don't have anything that has the word chat in it turns me off. I just don't need more chats in my world.
Yep.
Well, it's Instagram without a history. Yeah, that's definitely showing up in my children's world, certainly.
Well, I think that Twitter is is trying to emulate Instagram. Instagram is taking Follow Cloud share from Twitter, which is an important thing. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks.
Let's see you again next time. So I think that there's a really interesting challenge for Twitter to try and hold off the serious competitors. I think that Foursquare is going to be a serious competitor of Twitter as well, in terms of and I think LinkedIn is extraordinary in terms of its ability to start to formalize relationships. I'm getting pushed all these categories or whatever it is, citations or shout outs or whatever they're talking about. I still don't know what it means or have any way of really actually seeing. It's more like Google Plus circles for me than anything else. But these guys are all starting to form around this opportunity. Go ahead, Robert.
LinkedIn is an interesting one. I get a lot of business context stuff there, but the feed is very non-impressive to me. I have a lot of connections, so when I throw media in there, nothing happens, which tells me people are just not using the main feed to ingest information. They are messaging me there because they know the business relationships that I have. And there's an affordance for doing that, where Facebook, it doesn't have that business affordance. It's more of a personal affordance. Although some big deals have come through Facebook lately. It's been pretty crazy. To wrap it up, I think the differentiating factors for all these a year from now is going to be which ones have the more interesting noise controls, and signal amplifiers and the ability to see different things at different times. I mean, sometimes I'm really interested in the news. That's why I have all these lists on Facebook and on Twitter too. And sometimes I don't want to see the news. I just want to see who's having a baby, or my family information, stuff like that. But even in those contexts, I'm seeing noise. In fact, let's just look at family for a second. My ex-wife keeps posting photos. I don't really care about her photos. I wish I could say, only show me when my ex-wife is posting something about my son. And Aram, who lives in London, is posting some photos. Okay, great. And my wife has this funny story. And then there's all this music. Maybe I don't want music right now from my family. My family's musical tastes suck. So why would I want to see music from my family? There's not very good contextual filters for what I want. The people who have good musical taste are the teenagers in my life. So I'd love to see, show me all the teenagers and what they're listening to. Because and then filter out Bieber and filter out, who else is popular right now, and show me the newer kind of music. I can't do that right now. I can't ask it to recontextualize the streams in ways that I'm interested in, and I don't think that'll last very long. I'm going to visit Facebook and talk to them about how that world can come about.
All right, well, this has actually been, for me at least, a good show, and I appreciate you guys. I want to thank Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legess, without which this show would not be as healthy as it is today. I want to thank Newtek and their TriCaster for turning this into a video, and I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. I want to thank Robert Scoble. Thanks, Robert.
Guy Kawasaki's new shirt, by the way. I'm sure we'll get a shout out for that.
What does it mean, Abe?
It's his new book on self-publishing. So since I'm writing a book, I care about it, the topic a lot. So he sent me.
Stanley Kubrick reference, number 2001. Okay, and Kevin Marks, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Keith Tier. Hope that John Toshek feels better. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who will show up in the future. Bye-bye.